Have you ever been in a situation where words just didn't seem enough? Or perhaps there were moments when saying nothing at all felt like the most powerful response. How often do we find ourselves rushing to speak, thinking that our words will solve everything? But what if the most effective answer is the one left unsaid? Can silence, in fact, be louder than words? Let's take an example. Imagine you're in a heated argument, emotions are running high, and words are being thrown back and forth. But instead of reacting, you simply stay silent, not out of anger or disinterest, but with a calm presence. In that moment, your silence may have a stronger impact than any words could. It's not about shutting down communication. It's about communicating through your stillness, showing restraint, and letting the moment pass. This is where the power of silence lies. Welcome to Wisdom Woven. Today, we're diving deep into how silence can be one of the most profound answers in our lives. Throughout this video, we'll explore how silence shapes our actions, thoughts, and interactions, giving you insights you can apply every day. So, stay with us as we unravel this powerful concept. But before we get into all of that, did you know? There are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% of you subscribe. Why miss out on more transformative wisdom? Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a single valuable lesson. Now, let's explore how silence can truly be the loudest answer we can give in today's noisy world. Silence is not just the absence of noise. It's the presence of clarity, peace, and understanding. Let's take a closer look at how this quiet strength has the power to change the way we interact with ourselves and others. Why silence speaks louder than words. In a world filled with noise and constant chatter, it can be difficult to appreciate the value of silence. We live in an age where everyone seems to have an opinion and voices echo from every direction. Yet, silence has a unique power, one that speaks in ways words cannot. It is a language of its own, often conveying more than any sentence ever could. When we speak, our words are often influenced by our emotions, our moods, and the external world around us. Sometimes, they carry with them the weight of frustration or the desire to be heard. But silence, true silence, is free from these influences. It comes from a place of calm and clarity. In silence, we are not reacting to the world around us. We are simply being present with ourselves and with the moment. Imagine, for a moment, that you are sitting quietly in nature. You are not talking, not thinking about anything in particular, just observing. The breeze moves through the trees, the birds sing their songs, and the river flows steadily. The silence of nature is not empty. It is full of life. In this silence, you experience everything more deeply. There is no need for words. The quiet speaks volumes, reminding you that everything you need is already within you. In this same way, silence in our interactions with others can speak louder than words. Think of a conversation where one person is speaking passionately and the other remains silent, simply listening. The listener's silence does not mean indifference. Rather, it is a sign of deep attentiveness, a form of respect. By remaining silent, the listener is showing that they do not need to fill the space with words, that they are fully present in the moment. This can be a powerful way of connecting with another person, for it allows them to express themselves freely without interruption. Silence also has the ability to calm tense situations. In moments of conflict or argument, when emotions are high and words are being exchanged rapidly, silence can be a refuge. It is in these moments that saying nothing at all can create space for reflection. Silence gives time for the heat of the moment to cool down. It allows both parties to pause, to breathe, and to reflect before reacting. In this way, silence becomes a tool for peace, helping to prevent hasty words that may be regretted later. But why does silence have this power? It comes down to the way we, as human beings, connect with the world. Words are often used to assert ourselves, to make our presence known, to influence others. Silence, on the other hand, allows us to step back from this need to control and assert. It allows us to just be, to exist without the pressure of having to fill every moment with sound. This is a profound act, for in silence, we acknowledge that there is value in simply being present without the need to prove anything. In Buddhism, silence is seen as an expression of inner peace. It is not about being silent out of fear or avoidance, but about cultivating a deep sense of awareness and presence. Silence allows the mind to settle, to move beyond the constant stream of thoughts that often dominate our lives. When we are silent, we are no longer caught up in the noise of the world. We can see things more clearly, without the distortion of our personal biases or judgments. A key teaching in Buddhism is mindfulness, the practice of being fully aware of the present moment. Mindfulness often involves quieting the mind and focusing on the here and now. In this state of mindfulness, silence becomes a powerful tool for deepening our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. It is through silence that we are able to connect with our true nature, free from the distractions of the external world. But silence does not only serve as a tool for inner peace, it can also be a way of expressing compassion. When we choose to remain silent, we create space for others to speak. This act of listening without interrupting or judging can be deeply healing for those who may feel unheard or overlooked. In a world where many people are eager to express their own thoughts, being a silent listener can be a rare and precious gift. It shows that we value others enough to let them be heard in their own time. There are also times when silence serves as a form of strength. When faced with criticism or insult, it can be tempting to respond with words, to defend ourselves or our actions. But silence, in these moments, is often the most powerful response. It shows that we are not easily shaken, that we are secure in who we are, and that we do not need to engage in conflict to prove our worth. Silence can convey confidence, resilience, and wisdom, all without uttering a single word. In Buddhism, this is referred to as right speech, one of the key aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right speech is not about saying the perfect thing at the perfect moment. It is about knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. It is about choosing words that are beneficial, kind, and truthful. Sometimes, the most beneficial thing we can do is simply remain silent, allowing the situation to unfold naturally. When we remain silent, we are also able to connect more deeply with ourselves. Our minds are often cluttered with thoughts, worries, and desires, making it difficult to hear our inner voice. But in moments of silence, we are able to listen to that voice more clearly. It is in silence that we can truly understand our emotions, our desires, and our true needs. Silence gives us the space to reflect, to grow, and to become more attuned to our own thoughts and feelings. Silence can also be a form of liberation. In the noise of the world, it is easy to become overwhelmed by the opinions of others. We are constantly bombarded with information, and it can feel as though we must always have something to say in response. But when we embrace silence, we free ourselves from this pressure. We no longer need to conform to the expectations of others or be defined by their opinions. Silence allows us to reclaim our own space, to find our own voice, and to live in accordance with our true values. One of the most profound aspects of silence is its ability to heal. In our fast-paced world, it is easy to become disconnected from ourselves and others. We often fill every moment with noise, whether it be through conversation, music, or the distractions of technology. But in silence, we find a path to healing. It is in silence that we are able to reconnect with our true selves, to release the tension and stress that has accumulated in our lives, and to find peace once again. So, what can we learn from silence? It teaches us that sometimes, the best thing we can do is simply be still. It shows us that words are not always necessary to communicate, and that there is power in restraint. Silence allows us to be present, to listen deeply, and to connect with others in a more meaningful way. It gives us the space to reflect, to heal, and to grow. And most importantly, silence reminds us that we don't need to fill every moment with sound. Sometimes, the most powerful answer is the one we give without speaking at all. Inner stillness, finding peace amid chaos. The world is loud, isn't it? Everywhere we look, there's noise, distractions, and constant demands for our attention. The phone buzzing, the news blaring, people talking. All of it can feel overwhelming at times. But in the midst of all this noise, there is a place inside of you where peace exists. This place is not found in the outer world, but deep within you, in the stillness of your mind. Imagine this. You're sitting in a crowded room, people rushing about, loud conversations filling the air. Your mind begins to race. Thoughts of worries, tasks, and distractions flood in. But in the center of it all, you choose to breathe. Deeply, slowly. You let the noise fade into the background, and in that moment, you find a quiet space within yourself. This is the beginning of inner stillness. It's the ability to remain calm even when the world around you is chaotic. Inner stillness is not about escaping the world. It is about embracing the world, but not allowing it to control you. It's about being present with what is happening around you without being carried away by it. It's like standing in the middle of a storm, not fighting the wind, but simply allowing it to pass without being disturbed. The storm continues, but you remain centered. In Buddhism, this stillness is known as shunyata, or emptiness. But it is not emptiness in the sense of nothingness. It is the space where all things exist but are not attached to. It is a calmness that comes from within, unshaken by the external world. Just as a lake remains calm despite the winds that may blow across it, your mind can remain still despite the noise and chaos around you. But how do we find this inner stillness? How do we cultivate peace amidst the chaos? The first step is to let go of the need to control everything. We live in a world that constantly tells us to be in charge, to dominate our surroundings, to always have an answer. But true peace comes from releasing that need for control and simply being in the moment. Think of a river. The river doesn't struggle to flow. It simply follows its path. It doesn't resist the rocks or the bends in its way. It moves with ease, adapting to whatever is in its path. We can learn from this river. Life will bring obstacles, challenges, and noise. But if we stop resisting, if we stop trying to control everything, we can flow through life with more ease, grace, and peace. To cultivate inner stillness, you must first learn to quiet the mind. This doesn't mean forcing your thoughts to stop. That's impossible. It means becoming aware of your thoughts without being consumed by them. It's like watching clouds float by in the sky. You see them, but you don't get attached to them. They come, and then they go. In Buddhism, meditation is the practice that helps us cultivate this stillness. Meditation doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as sitting quietly for a few minutes, focusing on your breath. When thoughts arise, notice them, but let them pass without judgment. The more you practice this, the more you can carry this sense of stillness with you throughout your day. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the noise of the world. It's easy to think that peace can only be found in a quiet place, away from the chaos. But true peace is not dependent on external conditions. It's found in how we respond to the world, in how we choose to remain grounded despite the distractions. When you find inner stillness, you also find clarity. It's like cleaning a muddy window. When the window is covered in dirt, you can't see clearly. But when it's clean, everything becomes clear. Our minds are often clouded by distractions, worries, and stress. But when we allow ourselves to become still, we clear away the mental clutter, and clarity naturally emerges. Clarity is not something that is given to us from the outside. It's something that arises from within. When we are still, we can see things as they truly are, without the distortion of our thoughts and emotions. In this state of clarity, we can make better decisions, respond with wisdom, and act with compassion. But finding inner stillness requires patience. It's a skill that takes time to develop. In the beginning, you may find it difficult to quiet your mind. Thoughts may come rushing in, and you may feel frustrated. But don't give up. Like any skill, the more you practice, the easier it becomes. And even if the mind is loud, simply noticing that is a form of stillness. You are already on the path. In times of stress, anxiety, or fear, remember that inner stillness is always available to you. You don't have to search for it. It's already there, waiting for you to connect with it. The moment you take a breath and become present, you are tapping into that inner calm. Remember, peace doesn't come from avoiding the noise of the world. It comes from how we relate to that noise. By practicing inner stillness, you begin to respond to life from a place of calm, not reaction. This doesn't mean you won't feel emotions or face challenges. It means that, no matter what happens, you remain anchored in your inner peace. In the teachings of Buddhism, silence and stillness are seen as pathways to enlightenment. They are not just physical practices, but ways of being. When you embrace stillness, you embrace the present moment. You stop living in the past or the future and start experiencing life as it is, right here, right now. The beauty of inner stillness is that it doesn't require anything external. You don't need a special place, a specific time, or any external conditions. All you need is the willingness to be present and to let go of the need to control. When you stop fighting life, peace will naturally emerge. So, how do we begin? Start small. Take a moment each day to simply be still. Sit quietly and breathe. Don't judge your thoughts or try to stop them. Just observe them and let them pass. Over time, this practice will become easier, and you'll begin to notice moments of peace in the midst of your daily life. As you continue on this journey of finding inner stillness, remember that it is not a destination. It's a practice, a way of living. The more you practice, the more you will experience peace, not just in quiet moments, but in every moment of your life. And as you do, you will find that no matter how chaotic the world becomes, you can always return to the peace that resides within you. Mastering restraint, the strength of controlled speech. In life, there is great power in choosing our words carefully. Just as a gardener tends to a garden, selecting only the best seeds to plant, we too must carefully choose the words we allow to grow in our conversations. When we speak without thought or restraint, it is like scattering seeds in soil that is unprepared. The words can take root in unproductive ways, leading to misunderstandings, conflict, and regret. But when we master the art of controlled speech, we plant words that grow into understanding, peace, and connection. The Buddha taught that the mind is like a wild elephant, roaming wherever it pleases. Without discipline, our words flow from a mind that is uncontrolled, like an elephant causing destruction in every direction. But when we tame the elephant, when we calm the mind, our words become like a gentle breeze, carrying wisdom and kindness. This is the practice of restraint. Restraint is not about holding back your thoughts or pretending they don't exist. It is not about suppressing your true feelings or desires. Restraint is about understanding the power of words and choosing when and how to express them. When we practice restraint, we allow ourselves the space to reflect, to understand, and to respond with clarity instead of reacting impulsively. Imagine a moment when someone says something that stirs your emotions. You feel a rush of anger, a desire to defend yourself or lash out. But instead of speaking in the heat of the moment, you pause. You take a deep breath, allowing the surge of emotion to pass through you. You remain silent for a moment, observing the situation with clarity rather than reacting from a place of impulsive emotion. In that silence, you gain control over your response. The words you choose next are not driven by anger or hurt. They are thoughtful, measured, and calm. This practice of controlled speech is rooted in mindfulness. It is the ability to be aware of our emotions and thoughts without allowing them to dictate our actions. Just as a river flows peacefully when it is allowed to follow its natural course, our words can flow with calm and purpose when we let go of the need to react in haste. We are not denying our feelings or suppressing them. We are simply choosing to respond from a place of wisdom rather than from the turbulence of unchecked emotions. When we speak with restraint, we allow space for others to be heard. How often do we interrupt others, eager to express our own thoughts or prove a point? How often do we speak without fully listening, assuming we know what the other person is going to say? When we practice the art of controlled speech, we learn to listen deeply, to truly understand the other person's perspective. This act of restraint shows respect, not just for others, but for ourselves as well. The Buddha said that speech should be well considered, timely, and true. Words spoken without consideration can harm relationships, create division, and spread negativity. But words spoken with mindfulness, with awareness of their impact, can heal wounds, bridge divides, and foster connection. This is the power of restraint. Mastering controlled speech is not easy. It requires patience, practice, and awareness. It asks us to resist the temptation to speak without thinking, to slow down and listen before we respond. In every conversation, we have the choice to either speak impulsively or to speak with intention. The more we practice this art of restraint, the more natural it becomes. Over time, it becomes a habit, a way of being in the world that brings peace, understanding, and harmony. In the quiet moments of restraint, there is also great strength. We do not need to constantly speak in order to be heard. Sometimes, the most powerful message we can send is the one we do not speak at all. By choosing silence in moments of tension or conflict, we create space for reflection, understanding, and resolution. Our restraint allows the other person to speak, to express themselves fully, without feeling rushed or judged. This is a true act of compassion. There is wisdom in knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. As the Buddha taught, better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. When we master the art of restraint, our words become like that one word, filled with meaning, intention, and compassion. They carry the weight of truth, and they have the power to transform. The strength of controlled speech is not in the absence of words, but in the presence of wisdom. It is in the ability to choose our words with care, to speak only when it is necessary, and to listen deeply when it is not. It is the strength to remain calm and composed, even in the face of adversity or conflict. When we speak with restraint, we invite peace into our lives and into the lives of those around us. In this practice, there is a deep connection to our inner selves. We learn to listen to our own thoughts, to discern which are worth expressing and which are better left unsaid. We become more attuned to our emotions, recognizing when they are guiding us toward truth and when they are clouding our judgment. In this way, mastering controlled speech becomes a path to self-awareness and inner peace. The more we practice restraint, the more we begin to understand the power of silence. Silence is not just the absence of words. It is the presence of clarity, stillness, and wisdom. When we speak less and listen more, we begin to hear the deeper truths that lie beneath the surface of our everyday conversations. We begin to see the world with greater clarity and understanding. Mastering restraint is also a way of protecting our energy. How many times have we spoken out of frustration, only to feel drained afterward? How many times have we spoken words that we later regretted, wishing we could take them back? Restraint allows us to conserve our energy, to speak only when it will have a positive impact, and to avoid the drain of unnecessary or harmful words. As we continue to practice controlled speech, we begin to notice the shifts in our relationships and interactions. We find that we are more patient, more understanding, and more compassionate. Our words become like seeds planted in fertile soil, capable of growing into something beautiful and lasting. In this way, mastering restraint is not just about improving our communication, it is about improving ourselves. It is a practice that cultivates mindfulness, patience, and wisdom. It is a practice that helps us become more aware of our inner world and more connected to the world around us. By mastering the strength of controlled speech, we begin to live more consciously, more peacefully, and more harmoniously. We begin to understand that our words have the power to heal, to build, and to uplift. And with this understanding comes the responsibility to use our words wisely, to speak only when it is necessary, and to remain silent when it is not. In the end, it is not the number of words we speak that matters. It is the quality of those words. The true power of speech lies in its ability to connect us to others, to create understanding, and to foster peace. When we speak with restraint, we allow our words to be like seeds of wisdom, planted in the hearts of those who hear them. And in this way, we become true masters of our speech, capable of bringing healing, harmony, and understanding to the world. Silence as a tool for deep self-reflection. In the quiet moments, when the world around us is still, we find the space to reflect. Silence is not just the absence of sound. It is the fertile ground where wisdom grows. In today's busy world, we often find ourselves overwhelmed by the noise of life. The distractions, the demands, the constant input from everywhere. It all fills our minds and leaves little room for real thought. But when we pause, when we allow ourselves the gift of silence, we open the door to understanding ourselves on a much deeper level. Think about the times when you have been caught up in the busyness of life, constantly running from one task to another. In such moments, it's easy to lose sight of your true feelings, desires, and even your purpose. The constant noise drowns out your inner voice. But when you step into silence, even if just for a moment, something shifts. Your mind starts to clear, and you become more aware of what's really happening inside you. This is where silence becomes a tool for deep self-reflection. It allows you to slow down, to breathe, and to listen, not just to the world around you, but to the thoughts, emotions, and feelings stirring within you. In that stillness, you can ask yourself the tough questions. What do I truly want in life? What are my fears and doubts? What patterns of thought and behavior have I been trapped in? These are the questions that arise in the silence, and they can lead to profound realizations. Buddhism teaches that self-awareness is the key to enlightenment. But how can we become truly aware if we are constantly distracted? If our minds are always caught up in external noise, how can we understand the nature of our thoughts and actions? The answer lies in silence. Through silence, we begin to observe ourselves without judgment, without the need to react. We simply watch, listen, and learn. Silence gives us the space to pause and step back. It's like standing on a mountain and looking down at the valley below. From that vantage point, everything seems clearer, more connected. In the same way, when we step back from the rush of life, we begin to see the bigger picture of our own lives. The silence helps us to detach from our emotions, from our daily struggles, and to look at them with fresh eyes. In the stillness of silence, we can also find acceptance. It's easy to get caught in the cycle of self-criticism, always finding fault with ourselves, our actions, and our decisions. But in silence, we can embrace our imperfections without judgment. We don't need to fix everything in that moment. We can simply accept where we are, with all our flaws and uncertainties. This acceptance is not a resignation, but a recognition of our humanity. In this quiet space, we can begin to forgive ourselves, to release guilt, and to move forward with a sense of peace. But how do we create this space of silence in our daily lives? In a world that never stops, how do we find time to be still? The first step is simple. Set aside moments throughout the day to just be quiet. It doesn't have to be for long periods. Just a few minutes can make a huge difference. It could be first thing in the morning, before you check your phone or start your tasks for the day. Or it could be at night, before you go to bed, reflecting on the day's events in silence. The key is consistency. Like any habit, the more you practice being in silence, the easier it becomes. At first, you might feel uncomfortable or restless. Your mind will likely try to fill the silence with thoughts, worries, or distractions. But with time, you will learn to sit with the silence, allowing it to calm your mind and open your heart. In Buddhism, this practice is often referred to as mindfulness, the act of being fully present in the moment without attachment to the past or future. Mindfulness can be practiced in silence, where you simply observe your thoughts and emotions without judgment. You are not trying to change anything, you are just observing. This practice helps you become more aware of your patterns of thinking, your emotional responses, and the way you interact with the world. It teaches you to respond to situations, rather than reacting impulsively. As you become more accustomed to the practice of silence and self-reflection, you begin to notice changes in how you approach life. You become less reactive and more thoughtful. You learn to pause before responding, giving yourself the space to choose how to react rather than simply reacting out of habit. This gives you more control over your emotions and your actions. Instead of being swept away by external circumstances, you remain grounded and centered in your own wisdom. Silence also deepens your understanding of others. In moments of stillness, we not only reflect on ourselves but also on our relationships with others. We begin to see them with more clarity, free from the distractions of our own thoughts and judgments. We can listen to them more deeply, without rushing to respond or fix things. Silence allows us to truly hear what others are saying, not just the words, but the emotions and intentions behind them. When you are truly present in silence, you become more compassionate and empathetic. You start to understand that everyone has their own struggles, their own fears, and their own stories. You no longer view others through the lens of judgment or criticism. Instead, you see them as fellow travelers on the path of life, each doing their best with what they have. Silence also connects you to something deeper than yourself. In the stillness, you can experience a sense of oneness with the universe, with nature, and with all living beings. This connection brings a sense of peace and harmony that cannot be found through words or external distractions. It is in the silence that we tap into our true essence, the part of us that is beyond the ego, beyond the noise of the world. Through the practice of silence, we also develop patience. In a world that is constantly moving, We are often taught to hurry, to get things done as quickly as possible. But silence teaches us to slow down, to be present with each moment, no matter how small. It reminds us that everything in life unfolds at its own pace. By learning to be patient in silence, we become more patient with ourselves and others. The wisdom gained from silence is not always immediate. It's not like a light bulb moment that happens all at once. Instead, it's a gradual unfolding, like the blossoming of a flower. Over time, you will notice subtle shifts in how you think, feel, and act. You will become more mindful, more centered, and more aware of the world around you. These shifts may not always be dramatic, but they are profound. In moments of silence, we also cultivate gratitude. We begin to appreciate the simple things: the breath in our lungs, the warmth of the sun, the sound of birdsong. We realize that much of what we take for granted is actually a blessing. This gratitude brings a sense of contentment and joy that is not dependent on external circumstances. As we continue to practice silence, we also develop a deeper sense of trust. Trust in ourselves, trust in the process of life, and trust in the wisdom that comes from stillness. When we sit in silence, we are reminded that everything we need is already within us. We don't need to chase after external solutions or answers. The answers are found in the quiet space between our thoughts. The more we practice silence and self-reflection, the more we realize that we are not separate from the world around us. We are all interconnected, all part of a larger whole. This realization brings a sense of peace, knowing that we are exactly where we need to be, doing exactly what we are meant to do. Ultimately, silence is a journey of self-discovery. It's not a destination, but a path that leads us closer to our true selves. By embracing silence as a tool for deep self-reflection, we begin to see the world with new eyes. We understand ourselves better, we connect more deeply with others, and we find peace in the present moment. And in this silence, we discover the loudest answer of all, the answer that comes from within. The Buddhist perspective: wisdom born from silence. In the stillness of the mind, wisdom is born. To understand the Buddhist perspective on silence is to grasp the deep connection between inner peace and true understanding. Silence, in the Buddhist tradition, is not merely the absence of sound, but an essential doorway to insight and mindfulness. It is through silence that we become aware of the noise in our minds, and in that awareness, true wisdom arises. Imagine walking through a dense forest, your path blocked by heavy trees and underbrush. Each step you take feels uncertain, as if something is in the way. But then, the path clears. The air becomes lighter, the forest sounds quieter, and you can finally see where you are going. This is the effect of silence in Buddhism. Just as the clearing in the forest reveals the path, silence clears the clutter in our minds and reveals the deeper truths of life. Buddhism teaches that our minds are constantly filled with thoughts, distractions, and desires, much like a river filled with rushing water. It's difficult to see the bottom of the river when the water is turbulent, but when the water is still, clarity emerges. This stillness is the essence of meditation in Buddhism. It is through silence and the absence of distractions that we can connect with the present moment, allowing our true nature to come forward. When a Buddhist monk sits in meditation, they are not merely sitting in silence. They are allowing the mind to become calm and clear, cutting through the layers of confusion and delusion that cloud their understanding. Silence, in this sense, is not just a passive act. It is an active form of listening and observing. It is through silence that we begin to hear the voice of our inner wisdom, the voice that is often drowned out by the noise of the world. Silence in Buddhism is also a form of compassion. When we choose silence, we are often choosing to listen deeply to the needs and suffering of others. Words are not always necessary. Sometimes, simply being present and silent can offer a space for healing. It is said that in the presence of someone who is truly mindful, others feel heard, even without words. This is the power of silence in action. In the Buddhist teachings, there is a story of the Buddha being asked by a disciple how to attain wisdom. The Buddha responded not with a long speech but with a gesture. He picked up a flower and held it in silence. The disciple, upon seeing the flower, understood. This silence spoke volumes, more than any words could have. It was in the stillness that the disciple found the deepest understanding. This story reflects the Buddhist belief that true wisdom cannot always be expressed in words. Wisdom is often beyond language, beyond the grasp of the ordinary mind. Words are limited, but silence has the ability to reach beyond those limits. In silence, we connect with something deeper than thought, something universal and timeless. The Buddha himself often practiced silence, especially in moments of deep contemplation. He understood that speaking is often a distraction, even when the words are meant to help. Silence, in his eyes, was the doorway to inner peace, and only when one has achieved this inner peace can true wisdom arise. The power of silence in Buddhism is also linked to mindfulness, the practice of being fully present in each moment. When we are mindful, we are not distracted by our thoughts or emotions. We are simply present, experiencing life as it is, without judgment or interference. This mindfulness is cultivated through silence. By quieting the mind, we can observe our thoughts and emotions without becoming overwhelmed by them. In our modern world, it's easy to become consumed by constant noise and distractions. Our phones, social media, and the pressures of daily life all demand our attention. But Buddhism teaches us that true peace is found in the quiet moments, in the spaces between thoughts and actions. By embracing silence, we can find refuge from the chaos of the world and reconnect with our true selves. Silence is not something that comes easily, especially in a world that values constant activity and communication. But through the practice of meditation, Buddhists learn to cultivate silence within themselves. It is through this inner silence that they can begin to understand the nature of the mind, the impermanence of life, and the interconnectedness of all beings. In Buddhism, silence is not about withdrawing from the world. It is about becoming fully present in it. By quieting the mind, we can engage with the world more deeply, with greater awareness and compassion. Silence does not mean shutting ourselves off from others. It means listening more deeply, responding more thoughtfully, and acting with greater intention. The Buddha often spoke of the importance of right speech. Right speech is not just about saying the right things. It is about speaking with mindfulness and compassion. It is about knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. In many situations, silence can be the wisest choice. It allows us to pause, reflect, and respond in a way that is aligned with our deeper values. In our relationships, silence can be a powerful tool for understanding. When we listen without judgment, when we hold space for others to express themselves, we create an environment of trust and connection. Silence can deepen our relationships, allowing us to hear not just the words, but the emotions and intentions behind them. Buddhism also teaches that silence can be a form of liberation. We are often trapped by our own thoughts, our own desires, and our own need to control the world around us. Silence frees us from this mental chatter. It allows us to step outside of our conditioned responses and see things as they truly are. In this space of silence, we can experience freedom from suffering. In the practice of mindfulness meditation, silence is the foundation upon which everything else is built. It is in the silence that we observe the arising and passing away of thoughts and feelings. It is through this process that we come to understand the impermanent nature of all things. By observing our thoughts in silence, we begin to see them for what they are, temporary and fleeting. This realization helps us detach from our thoughts, reducing their power over us. Silence in Buddhism is not a form of denial or avoidance. It is a way of embracing reality without resistance. It is the space where we can encounter life as it is, without the need to constantly react or interpret. In this space, we can experience the world without the filter of our conditioned mind. True silence, according to Buddhist teachings, is a profound experience of oneness with the universe. It is the quiet awareness of all things, without judgment or attachment. It is the wisdom that arises when we let go of the need to control or label our experiences. In silence, we are simply being, without striving or grasping. By practicing silence, we come to realize that the answers we seek are often already within us. The noise of the world may distract us, but in silence, we reconnect with the wisdom of our own hearts. Silence is not empty. It is full of potential, full of understanding, and full of peace. So, when faced with a moment of confusion or uncertainty, consider silence as your response. Instead of reacting with words or actions, take a breath, embrace the stillness, and let your wisdom guide you. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is the presence of clarity, understanding, and compassion. Through silence, we learn to listen, not just to others, but to ourselves. In this listening, we discover the truth of our own existence, the interconnectedness of all beings, and the wisdom that arises from deep within. This is the essence of Buddhist silence, a silence that speaks louder than any words ever could. The art of listening, silence as a gateway to understanding. To truly listen, one must first learn to silence the mind. In a world full of distractions and endless chatter, the ability to listen with full attention is a rare and precious skill. But listening does not mean simply hearing the words. It goes beyond the physical act of hearing. It requires an openness, a deep presence that allows the other person's message to reach you without judgment, interruption, or expectation. Imagine for a moment, you're sitting in front of someone, and they are speaking to you, but your mind is racing. You're already thinking about your response, about what you're going to say next. In that moment, you are not truly listening. You are only hearing the sounds, waiting for your turn to speak. This is where silence comes into play. True listening requires silence, not just in the external world, but within your own mind as well. This is the wisdom of silence. It allows space for the other person's words to be heard and understood, without interference from your own thoughts. In silence, you create the perfect conditions for deep listening, for understanding that goes beyond the surface level of words. When you listen in silence, you are not just hearing sounds. You are receiving the essence of what is being shared. When we speak, we often do so with the intention of being heard. We want our words to carry weight, to convey meaning, to influence others. But in the act of listening, we shift our focus entirely. We no longer center ourselves. We open ourselves up to the other person. We make space for them, for their emotions, for their ideas, for their perspective. In Buddhism, listening is considered an act of compassion. To truly listen is to give the other person the gift of being heard. It is to acknowledge their suffering, their joy, their fears, and their hopes. When we listen with compassion, we do so without judgment, without trying to fix or change the other person's feelings. We simply listen, with an open heart in mind, allowing them to speak their truth. But listening doesn't stop with others. To listen deeply to another, we must first learn to listen to ourselves. The practice of mindfulness teaches us to turn our attention inward, to listen to the thoughts and feelings that arise within us, without judgment. In silence, we learn to hear the whispers of our inner wisdom, the quiet guidance that comes from a place of stillness. It is in this silence that we can begin to understand our true nature. When we listen to ourselves, we can better understand our reactions to the world around us. We can observe how our emotions arise, how our thoughts come and go, and how we often get caught in the cycles of the mind. Through this deep listening, we can begin to free ourselves from the patterns that limit us, and we can make space for clarity and peace. In the same way that silence allows us to listen to others, it also creates a space for us to listen to the world itself. Silence opens our ears to the sounds of nature, to the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, the flow of water. In these moments of stillness, we can reconnect with the earth, with the rhythm of life that exists beyond the noise of human existence. In silence, we hear the language of the universe, speaking to us in ways words cannot. The more we practice silence, the more we learn to listen, not just to the words others speak, but to the deeper truths that lie beneath them. We begin to hear the emotions behind the words, the fears, the hopes, the desires. We begin to listen to the unspoken, the things that are left unsaid, the things that are often more important than the words themselves. True listening requires us to be fully present in the moment. When we are truly present, we stop thinking about the past or the future. We let go of distractions and focus completely on the person in front of us, on their words, on their body language, on their energy. In this state of presence, silence becomes a bridge, a gateway through which understanding flows freely. But silence is not always easy. It is easy to be distracted by our own thoughts, to get lost in our own inner dialogue. It is easy to feel the urge to fill the space with words, to make ourselves heard, to prove that we understand. But in these moments, Silence is the most powerful tool we have. When we let go of the need to speak, we create space for the other person's words to come through clearly. We open the door to true understanding. Silence and listening is not passive. It is active, engaged, and intentional. It is not about being silent out of disinterest or discomfort. It is about choosing to be silent so that we can truly hear what is being shared. It is about choosing to listen with our whole being, heart, mind, and spirit. When we listen in this way, we honor the other person, and we honor ourselves. The more we practice this art of listening, the more we begin to hear the world in new ways. We begin to hear the subtle messages that are often hidden beneath the surface. We begin to hear the language of our own hearts and the language of the universe. In silence, we learn to listen not only to the words, but to the deeper meaning that lies behind them. In this silence, we find wisdom. In this listening, we find connection. Through silence, we open ourselves up to the world in ways we never imagined possible. And as we continue on this path, we discover that the art of listening is, in itself, a path to enlightenment. So, let us remember that silence is not an absence. It is a presence. It is the space in which understanding is born, the silence through which we can hear the truth. When we learn to listen with silence, we discover the deepest truths about ourselves, about others, and about the world around us. And in that listening, we find peace, turning silence into personal strength. When we think about strength, many of us picture loudness, strong voices, bold actions, and a presence that demands attention. But true strength doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes, the quietest moments hold the greatest power. In silence, we find a deep, unshakable strength that can change how we face challenges, how we deal with pain, and how we relate to the world around us. This strength is not the strength of the body, but the strength of the mind and spirit. It's easy to be swept up in the noise of the world. There's always something pulling at us, people, opinions, distractions, and in all this chaos, we often lose touch with ourselves. But in silence, we reconnect. It's in the quiet moments that we realize we are enough. We don't need to be anything more than we already are. Think about how silence shapes us in everyday life. When faced with a tough situation, do we rush to speak, to defend ourselves, or do we pause and listen? That pause, that moment of silence, is where our true strength lies. In silence, we find clarity. We gain the ability to see things for what they truly are, without the cloud of hasty judgments or emotional reactions. In those quiet moments, we stop reacting and start responding. There's a difference between the two. A reaction is impulsive, often driven by emotions and external pressures. A response, on the other hand, is thoughtful and deliberate. It comes from a place of inner calm. Silence allows us to move from reaction to response, and this shift gives us incredible power. It transforms us into people who can face life's challenges with grace and wisdom, instead of being swept away by every wave of emotion. Silence also helps us build resilience. When life is tough, when the road is rough, silence teaches us how to endure. It shows us that we don't need to add noise to our suffering. We don't need to constantly talk about our pain or complain about our struggles. Silence allows us to sit with our emotions without running from them. It's in these silent moments that we can heal, because we give ourselves the space to feel, to process, and to grow. In Buddhism, silence is seen as a way to clear the mind and open the heart. It's a path to mindfulness. By practicing silence, we learn to quiet the inner chatter that keeps us from experiencing the present moment fully. When our minds are constantly filled with noise, we miss the beauty of life unfolding around us. But when we embrace silence, we can hear the gentle whispers of our own heart and the wisdom that lies within. The more we practice silence, the stronger we become. It's not about shutting the world out, but about tuning into what truly matters. In silence, we find a kind of power that doesn't need to be seen or heard to be felt. It's the power of being fully present, of standing firm in who we are, without needing the approval of others. Every day, we can choose to embrace silence. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can be as simple as taking a deep breath before responding in a conversation, or stepping back and pausing when we feel overwhelmed. It's about creating space in our lives for quiet reflection, and in that space, we find the strength to be our best selves. Silence also teaches us to be kind. When we speak less, we listen more. And when we listen, we understand. True strength comes not from dominating conversations or always having the last word, but from knowing when to let others speak, when to truly hear them. In silence, we find humility. We realize that we don't have to fill every silence with our own voice. Sometimes, the best thing we can do is simply be present and listen. As we cultivate silence, we learn to manage our emotions better. Instead of reacting impulsively, we take a step back and allow ourselves to process what we feel. This gives us the space to decide how we want to respond, rather than being controlled by our emotions. Silence helps us maintain balance, especially in situations where it's easy to lose control. It's the anchor that keeps us grounded, no matter how stormy the seas may get. When we stop filling our lives with unnecessary noise, we also begin to recognize what truly matters. We start to see the things we may have overlooked before. Small moments of joy, the beauty of nature, the love of family and friends. Silence allows us to appreciate life more deeply. It clears away the clutter and reveals the simple, beautiful truths that we so often miss in the rush of our daily lives. Silence teaches us patience. In a world that demands instant results, silence encourages us to slow down. It reminds us that good things take time. When we are silent, we give ourselves the opportunity to grow. We learn that we don't need to rush to the next thing, but that every moment is valuable in its own right. Patience is a quiet strength, and silence helps us cultivate it. True personal strength is not about overpowering others, but about mastering ourselves. Silence is the key to this mastery. It helps us gain control over our thoughts, emotions, and actions. It's in the stillness that we truly know ourselves. We stop chasing after external validation and begin to trust our inner wisdom. Silence helps us become our most authentic selves. When we embrace silence, we also begin to embrace the present moment. In our busy, fast-paced lives, it's easy to get lost in the past or future. But in silence, we come back to the here and now. We realize that the present moment is all we truly have, and it's in this moment that we can find peace. Silence helps us let go of regrets about the past and worries about the future, so we can focus on living fully in the present. Finally, silence is not an escape. It's not about avoiding problems or shutting down. It's about creating the mental and emotional space to face life's challenges head-on. When we learn to be comfortable in silence, we are not running from life's difficulties. We are learning to meet them with calm and clarity. Silence empowers us to face whatever comes our way, not with fear, but with strength and understanding. In embracing silence, we discover a strength that is quiet but powerful. It's the strength of knowing who we are, of standing firm in our values, and of responding to life's challenges with grace and wisdom. The more we practice silence, the more we tap into this inner power. And in doing so, we become the calm in the storm, the steady presence that can face anything with peace and strength. The transformative power of silence, a final reflection. My dear listener, we have journeyed far. From the first steps of discovering the power of silence to exploring its depths, we have walked this path together. But now, we have reached the final part of our journey. Let us pause, breathe deeply, and reflect on all that we have learned. Silence is not merely the absence of sound. It is the presence of something far greater. It is the space where the mind rests, where the heart opens, and where wisdom begins to flow. Have you noticed how the loudest moments in life often lead to regret, while the quietest moments give birth to clarity? Silence is not a weakness. It is strength wrapped in stillness. Let me share a simple story. A monk and his disciple once sat by a river, watching the water flow gently over the rocks. The disciple asked, "Master, how can silence be the answer when the world demands action?" The monk smiled and pointed to the water. "Look at the river," he said. "It flows silently, yet it carves mountains. It nourishes life, yet it does not shout. Silence is action without noise." The disciple nodded, understanding that true power often needs no announcement. Now, take a moment to think about your own life. How often do you rush to fill the silence with words, explanations, or justifications? How often do you feel the urge to speak when the situation calls for quiet? Silence does not mean doing nothing. It means choosing your actions and words wisely. It means creating space for understanding and letting the truth rise naturally. There is a beauty in silence that no noise can match. Think of the dawn, the quiet before the day begins. In that stillness, everything feels possible. The mind is clear, the heart is open, and the world is at peace. That is the power of silence. It prepares us to face the chaos of life with calmness and courage. Silence also teaches us about connection. When we are silent, we hear more. Not just the words of others, but the unspoken feelings behind them. We become better listeners, better friends, and better human beings. Silence allows us to truly be present with others, to understand them not through what they say, but through who they are. In the teachings of Buddhism, silence is seen as a gateway to enlightenment. The Buddha himself often remained silent when asked profound questions, not because he did not know the answers, but because he wanted his followers to discover the truth within themselves. Silence, he taught, is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is where the answers lie. But silence is not always easy. It requires patience, practice, and courage. In a world that values noise, silence can feel uncomfortable, even threatening. Yet, it is in these moments of discomfort that we grow. Every time we choose silence over impulsive reactions, we strengthen our inner peace. Every time we pause before speaking, we give ourselves the gift of reflection. Let us not forget the power of silence in relationships. When tempers flare, silence can be the bridge that brings people back together. When misunderstandings arise, silence can create the space needed for clarity and reconciliation. Silence is not about ignoring others. It is about valuing them enough to listen deeply and respond thoughtfully. Then what about silence in our personal lives? In the stillness of meditation or a quiet walk in nature, we reconnect with ourselves. We hear the whispers of our soul, guiding us toward what truly matters. Silence helps us separate the noise of the world from the voice of our inner truth. As we end this journey, I want to leave you with one final thought. Silence is your teacher, your guide, and your refuge. It is always there, waiting for you to embrace it. The next time you find yourself in a moment of conflict, doubt, or overwhelm, choose silence. Let it calm your mind, soften your heart, and show you the way. Now, dear listener, if this journey through the power of silence has touched your heart or inspired your mind, I ask for one final gesture. There are so many of you who have watched these teachings, yet only 0.2% have subscribed to Wisdom Woven. If these words have brought you even a moment of peace or clarity, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Together, we can continue this journey of wisdom and growth. Remember, silence is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the space where all things are possible, where healing begins, and where wisdom grows. May you carry this lesson with you, not just today, but every day. Let your silence be the loudest answer, the clearest message, and the deepest truth. Until we meet again, may peace be with you.